Jennifer Schuett was only 8 years old when the unimaginable happened. In the dead of night, as the world around her slept peacefully, a stranger silently slipped into her bedroom. Without warning, her life was ripped away from her, a nightmare she never saw coming. The man who took her was no one she had ever met, no one she could ever have imagined would come for her. He was a predator, someone who had been watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. In that instant, Jennifer was torn from the safety of her home, taken from her warm bed, and transported to a place where evil loomed. Her abductor wasn't just a man with a sinister plan. He was a cold and calculated stranger who was about to leave Jennifer for dead. He drove her to a secluded, empty field, a place where the world would never know what had happened. There, he would attempt to end her young life most brutally and horrifyingly, slitting her throat and leaving her to bleed out in the dark. But Jennifer did not die. Against every possible outcome, against the odds stacked so high that no one thought she would survive, she found the strength inside her to endure. She couldn't scream. She couldn't move. Her body was paralyzed by pain, but her spirit was unbroken. She fought back in the only way she knew how, by refusing to give up. Her survival would become a story of extraordinary courage, resilience, and an unyielding determination that defied everything she had been told. And decades later, Jennifer would be the one to bring the man who tried to kill her to justice. The girl who was never supposed to live, never supposed to speak, and never supposed to seek justice, she would do it all. This is the incredible and inspiring story of Jennifer Schuett, a survivor, a fighter, and a testament to the power of never giving up. The story begins on the night of August 10, 1990, in Dickinson, Texas. Jennifer, an innocent 8-year-old girl, had spent a normal, carefree day outside playing with her friends. She had no idea that the evening would bring a terror she could never have imagined. That night, like every other, she went to bed, snuggled under her blankets, her mind drifting off to sleep. But as the rest of the world slept, a predator waited in the shadows, watching her with eyes full of malice. It was only when the night was at its darkest, when all seemed still and quiet, that Jennifer was startled awake by the horrifying sight of a strange man standing over her bed. Before she could even process what was happening, the man covered her mouth with his hand, preventing her from screaming. He lifted her small, frightened body from the safety of her bed, carried her through the window, and placed her inside a car, her world spinning into chaos. With a chilling voice, the man whispered words designed to confuse and mislead her, to disarm her fear and make her believe there was safety where there was none. "Shoo, don't be scared. I'm an undercover police officer." Jennifer, terrified and confused, knew immediately something was wrong, but she couldn't fight back. She was just a little girl. The man climbed into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and drove off into the night, away from her home, away from everything familiar, into an uncertain and terrifying darkness. They drove for miles, the car speeding through the night, until they reached a desolate field far from Jennifer's apartment. The only sounds were the rustling of trees in the wind and the far-off hum of traffic, the world outside seeming to mock her vulnerability. The man stopped the car and sat in silence, watching her with cold eyes. In that moment, Jennifer knew that she was no longer safe. She was alone in a place she couldn't escape from. And then, the nightmare began. With a sudden, violent motion, the man lunged at her. His hands tightened around her throat, squeezing the life from her fragile body. Jennifer kicked and struggled with everything she had left, her tiny fists pounding at him, but it was useless. She was only 8 years old, powerless against an adult's strength. The man then pulled out a knife, and in a final, monstrous act, he slashed her throat. The pain was excruciating. He left her there to die, blood pooling beneath her, her body too weak to move. And for a moment, Jennifer's world went dark. She blacked out, her consciousness slipping away. But against all odds, Jennifer woke up. Her throat was sliced so deeply that she couldn't speak. She was paralyzed with pain, unable to move. Every inch of her body screamed for help, but no one was there. The field was eerily silent. There were no houses, no people, no way to escape. Jennifer wanted to cry, to call for her mother, but no sound would come. She could barely hold her eyes open, struggling to stay conscious. As the hours passed, the sun began to rise, and Jennifer could feel the heat on her skin. Her body was weak from blood loss, and dehydration set in. But even as her strength faded, her resolve remained unbroken. She refused to give up. For nearly 14 hours, Jennifer lay there, fighting to stay alive, waiting, hoping for a miracle. And that miracle came when 2 children, playing nearby, noticed something unusual in the grass. At first, they thought it was a doll, a lifeless object in the middle of the field. But as they approached, their curiosity gave way to horror. They saw a little girl, barely alive, covered in dried blood, staring back at them. They immediately called for help, and paramedics rushed to the scene. When they arrived, They couldn't believe their eyes. Jennifer was still breathing. She was rushed to the hospital, where doctors were astonished by her survival. The injury to her throat was so severe that she couldn't speak, but Jennifer was determined to help catch her attacker. With shaky hands, she was given a pen and paper, and she wrote, "The man hurt me." Then, she described him, every detail she could remember. A white man with a scruffy beard, driving a red car. That description was all they had. The police had a lead, but no suspect. The search for the man who had done this to her began, but weeks turned into months, and months into years. No one could find him. Jennifer's life became a battle, not just for survival, but for closure. She grew up haunted by the trauma of that night. The nightmares, the flashbacks, the constant struggle with trust. Everything about her world was shaped by the attack. But Jennifer made a promise to herself that she would never stop fighting. She would never stop searching for the man who had tried to kill her. And she didn't. It wasn't until 2009, nearly 2 decades later, that a breakthrough occurred. Advances in DNA technology allowed police to reopen the case and run DNA samples from Jennifer's assault through a national database. This time, they found a match. His name was Dennis Earl Bradford. He had been living a normal life, blissfully unaware that his past was about to catch up with him. Jennifer's fight had not been in vain. When police arrived at Bradford's door, they informed him of the reason for their visit. And without hesitation, Bradford confessed. "Yes," he said, almost nonchalantly, "I'm the one you're looking for." He was shocked when he learned that Jennifer had survived. He had thought she had died that night, but she hadn't. She was alive, and she had waited nearly 19 years for this moment. Jennifer stepped into the courtroom, her heart pounding in her chest. She was ready to face the man who had tried to take everything from her, the man who had caused her so much pain. With unwavering strength, she looked him in the eyes and said, "I waited 19 years, 2 months, and 3 days to see your face again. Now, you will remember mine." It was the moment of ultimate power. Jennifer had taken control of her story. She had reclaimed her voice, her dignity, and her justice. But before Bradford could stand trial, he ended his life in jail. He never had the chance to face the full consequences of his actions. Jennifer, now a wife and mother, has built a life of love and happiness. But more importantly, she is a voice for survivors everywhere. She travels, speaks at events, and shares her story, inspiring others who have experienced trauma to find their own strength. Jennifer Schuett was never supposed to live. She wasn't supposed to speak. She wasn't supposed to find justice. But she did. Her story is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is a flicker of light. There is always hope. Survivors are stronger than their attackers. And Jennifer's resilience is proof that justice, no matter how long it takes, will always prevail. If Jennifer's story touched your heart, if it inspired you, hit the like button, subscribe for more incredible true crime stories, and share this video to raise awareness for the power of survival. Justice doesn't always come quickly, but it always finds a way.